You've seen the pictures and they are stunning. And I'm talking about the pictures of Little French Key. That overwater swing moment, the floating hammocks, it really does look like paradise, including that ridiculously clear turquoise water. And for a lot of cruisers, it is the Roatan excursion. It's the one thing that they sometimes build a whole itinerary or day around. But here's the thing. What the pictures don't show you is the potential for a booking nightmare. There are fake sites. Yes, fake sites, and a lot of confusion about this resort. And cruisers sometimes will show up with receipts for reservations that don't exist. And this is not just a rumor, but this is something that actually has happened. It's happened to real people. Enough so that Little French Key had to put a big warning on their website to let people know. So keep watching, because in a minute, I'll give you the real tea on why scammers be scamming, whether Little French Key is really worth it, including my honest take on the good and the bad, and I'll share one exclusive way that you can book legitimately and save 5% on your booking that you will not find anywhere else. Hi, I'm Melissa, a university professor who loves to cruise and who loves to talk ship. Now let's talk about the part that no one talks about. Why is booking a beach day at Little French Key such a challenge? The short version, legal drama. Now, I always had heard about Little French Key. Cruisers always talked really highly about it, but I always avoided booking it because I heard that there's kind of this pseudo shadiness around it. And I wanted to know more, and so when I visited finally on a recent trip to Roatan, I kind of got to chat with some folks that have worked there for a really long time. And it boils down to legal drama. There was a pretty messy ownership dispute. Let's say it involved a former husband and wife, and we know sometimes divorces aren't always amicable. And this divorce really went sideways, and it spun off into a dispute about who owns the property and official looking websites. And it just created mass confusion. So a lot of people were booking and then being told that their bookings weren't actually legit, and there's other websites or other Instagram pages, and it's hard to determine what is the real official Little French Key website and social media channels. So if you do want to book a day at Little French Key, what should you watch for? How can you tell a fake booking site from the real one? And how can you not fall prey in this drama that has created confusion for a lot of cruisers who just want to visit a beautiful resort? So the biggest red flag is the URL. Some scammers will register sites like littlefrenchkey.net or officiallittlefrenchkey.com, or they will tack on words like Roatan to make it look convincing. So always look really, really carefully. Don't even Google it. The real website is littlefrenchkeyresort.com. That's right, littlefrenchkeyresort.com. I got this straight out of the mouths of the marketing folks because I chatted them up when I was there. It's not .info, not .bookings.com. It's littlefrenchkeyresort.com. That's it. And again, because of this confusion, the official website, littlefrenchkeyresort.com, has a big disclaimer right there on its website. So that's how you know it's real. That's the actual website. But if you also want to be sure, you can check out the contact information. Scam sites often list generic email addresses like Gmail, or they use only a web form. The real Little French Key has a phone number, it has an address, it has an email that's tied to their domain, and you can also check their social media, although there have been some fake Little French Key social pages out there as well. So make sure that you are on the official site. And this is important because for a lot of cruise destinations, resorts, things like that, a lot of times you can buy passes for these places at reputable third-party sites like Viator and Expedia. Those are two big ones. By the way, I'll drop my Viator link below if you want to check out excursions so your girl gets a little bit of a cut at no additional cost to you. But in the case of Little French Key, third-party sites are not authorized to sell standalone Little French Key passes. So if you want a standalone pass, you pretty much have to buy it from Little French Key directly. So again, it's really important that you go to the actual website, littlefrenchkeyresort.com, and book direct. That's it. That's the whole secret. But again, in a minute, I'm going to tell you a special code that will save you 5% off. Now, once you're on the site, the official site, you can navigate and see what your different options are. Their website lists every one of their packages very clearly. Most cruisers pick the full island package, which comes with lunch, 2 drinks, access to kayaks, snorkel gear, and of course your beach day access. And there's also a more basic discovery package and then a handful of upgrades that you can add on as well, depending on what you want for your experience. After you book, you should get a detailed confirmation email. It will include very detailed port-specific directions. I was actually really impressed with the level of detail that they provided when I booked it. And if you don't know, Roatan does have 2 cruise terminals, Mahogany Bay, which is currently going to be renamed as Carnival continues to develop that port, and Cox and Hole, which is pretty much all the non-Carnival corporate cruise line ships. You'll also find in the email tips on disembarking early and exactly where to find their team, because they do provide transportation. So again, their communication is really thorough. It's really excellent. And are you ready for your money saving tip exclusive in this video? If you book through their official site, as you go through their form, you're gonna give all your information. There's a special text box that asks for special accommodations, special requests, stuff like that. If in that text box you put the code PROFMELISSA, PROFMELISSA, you will save 5% on your booking. Like I said, when I visited recently, I talked to their marketing folks. I'm like, hey, could you throw a discount for my social media friends? And they said sure, so they hooked it up. So that is a special little discount on your booking. So make sure when you do book, enter that so you can save a little bit of money. Now, once you're booked, again, you're gonna get an email that has lots of really detailed information, and it's gonna be a little bit different depending on which port that you're docked at. And the instructions will make it very, very clear where you're supposed to go, because the great thing about booking with Little French Key is that it does include round trip transportation. They'll give you directions on how this works. Basically, the Little French Key driver will meet you outside of the port gate. Different port authorities don't let independent vendors typically in the cruise terminal area, so you gotta exit out of the port gates, but follow their instructions and you will be just fine. So at Mahogany Bay, I had to exit out of the cruise port. There's actually kind of a steep hill you have to go up and down, but it's not difficult to find. Once you find your driver, they'll usually have signs that are very clearly marked, but you'll hop in an air-conditioned van or car for a 20-minute drive to their docks. Often Little French Key will contract with local drivers and taxi drivers. By the way, if you're visiting Roatan and you want a private driver, I've got an amazing one. I'll give you his information below. But if you're just going to Little French Key, save your money. You don't need to book him, just use the free round-trip transportation that's included when you buy your pass to Little French Key. Once you're in the vehicle, it's only about a 20-minute drive to the Little French Key dock, and that's gonna vary a little bit depending on which port you're docked. From there though, Little French Key is an island, so the only way you get to an island is on a boat. So they'll check you in, they'll verify that you have a reservation. Always make reservations in advance. Again, use code PROFMELISSA when you're checking out, save 5%, because this is a popular attraction, it is a popular destination, it often sells out. So you want to check in, they'll verify your information, they'll give you a wristband, and then you'll wait, and then you will take a short 5-minute boat ride over to the island. It's really short, it's a really quick process, very efficient, and the boat ride itself is kind of nice. Then, once your boat lands on the island, there will be someone with Little French Key there to greet you and to kind of show you a little bit of a tour. So you might be wondering, what is the island actually like once you get on it? I will tell you, it's exactly as dreamy as the photos make it look, but I will give you a couple little caveats, so stay tuned for that. Little French Key really nails the private island vibe. There's crystal clear water, there's hammocks over the sea, there's palm trees, there's peacocks roaming the property, the sand is soft and white. They have swings, they have a high jump that my daughter, who's a tween, absolutely loved. They have lots of shaded areas and plenty of chairs, so you don't have to worry about big crowds or trying to find a chair. That stuff always stresses me out. And what I love about Little French Key is it never feels overcrowded because they do not oversell. They do limit the number of passes that they sell. Now, if you're into more adventurous things, you can snorkel. I always bring my own set. You can use their paddle boards, you can just float in the pool, or you can just vibe underneath a shaded palapa. Now, the protected swimming area here is a huge plus. Oftentimes when I'm cruising with kids, like in this case, when I visited Little French Key recently, I don't want a lot of heavy aggressive waves or a lot of sea creatures around because, you know, I'm worried about my kid. So the great thing about Little French Key is that it is a protected swimming area. So there's kind of a rock wall, it's kind of netted off. So it's nice and calm, and there are deep areas if you want to do things like snorkel or get a little deeper, but it's shallow enough for little kids or tweens or younger kids or people that just don't like deep water to enjoy. And you don't have to worry about sharks and things like that. And there's also no aggressive waves, there's no strong currents, just crystal clear, beautiful, warm water. It feels like a hot tub. Now, here's a little bit of a controversial thing when it comes to Little French Key. If you like animals, you might love Little French Key, or you might hate it. Why? Because when you get off the boat on the island, they'll give you a quick tour of their rescue sanctuary when you arrive. So this is what they call it. They call it a rescue sanctuary. So on site, they do have monkeys, parrots, and a couple of big cats. And this is the part that's really polarizing. Some guests love it because it's kind of like an unexpected zoo at an island resort area. Others, including me, feel a little weird about the enclosures. I personally don't like seeing a big cat in a smallish cage, but the same issue that we have with zoos. So if you don't like that thing, it is brief, you can skip it and say, I just want to go straight to the beach, I don't want to see it. But there are a lot of peacocks free roaming, which is nice to see. And the property itself is just absolutely beautiful. Now, the one caveat though, I will be very direct and honest here. Little French Key, She's a little dated. So when you see the docks that are wood, you can tell that once upon a time they were a beautiful, vibrant turquoise color. The paint is a little faded. Some of the chairs need a little maintenance or maybe to be thrown out and replaced with new ones. When you visit Little French Key, this is definitely not a brand new resort area. It's been around a while. It could have definitely been better maintained. So make sure you know that going into it or you're going to end up being disappointed. Still though, I found it to be very worthwhile, especially for the price. And I didn't mind a little bit of needed maintenance. I didn't mind peeling paint. I didn't mind the chairs. I did have a broken chair originally, and I asked one of the attendants and they brought me a new one and it was fine. So at the end of the day, is it worth it? And what's included with the packages at Little French Key? Now, I like to ball on a budget, so I went with a little bit more of a basic full island package, which at the time that I went, which was a few months ago, ran $98 plus tax, which I thought was a very good deal. I do a lot of these beach day experiences at cruise port destinations, most of them in the Caribbean, and this is a pretty good bargain because it does include your round trip transportation. It does include lunch. Now, it's not an all-you-can-eat gorge fest. It is very limited. You do get 2 drinks, a reserved beach spot, and by that you're just guaranteed a chair. And then you do have access to their water sport equipment like kayaks and paddle boards and stuff like that. So that's a pretty solid value compared to a lot of comparable private excursions at other cruise port destinations. Now, when it comes to lunch, they do have kind of a grill area. It's nice and shaded, which is great because when I visited, there was about an hour-and-a-half period where it absolutely poured the rain. So we took that time to go in there and have lunch. So it is served to you. There is a pretty limited menu, so if you're traveling with picky eaters, make sure you are aware of this. A lot of it is local Honduran food. You're gonna find a lot of grilled meats, rice and beans, plantains, salads, things like that. But of course, there are some options for picky Americans like hamburgers and chicken tenders, but it definitely leans more toward the local fare. And the drinks here, they're pretty simple. You're not gonna find any bougie craft cocktails, but they're fine for what it is. And again, you are limited. This is not an all-inclusive. It's not just order as many drinks as you want. You get drink tickets, you have a meal ticket, and once you've used them, you gotta pay. Now, in terms of paying, there are also other things that you can add on to your visit. You can get a massage. If you are into the animal thing, there are things like swimming with the pigs, horseback riding, stuff like that. You can book these all on site. Again, when you're on the website, it will show you all those different add-ons, and make sure you always bring cash or a card. And remember that they charge a 15 to 19% tax. So while the property, the chairs, things like that, definitely dated, it definitely could use some major maintenance. It is clean, the servers are friendly, the food is okay. It's not the best food I've ever had, but it's good. But the experience feels really premium because of where you're at. It does feel like paradise. For me, I'm focused on the sand and the water and the vibes. And when it comes to that, Little French Key absolutely delivered. Now let's talk about another point of confusion when it comes to Little French Key. Not only has there been the ownership drama, the website drama, but there's always confusion too about Little French Key and Big French Key. Are they the same? Well, I always was curious about this too, so I had to do a little bit of digging. The answer is no, they are not the same. They are different properties, they're different resorts owned by different people. Now, what makes this confusing is not just that they have the same name, just little and big being the difference, but they're also literally adjacent to each other. Literally, they're swimmable. And I even had to, again, do some investigative journalism while I was on my visit. So I was at Little French Key and I swam through the deep spot over to the Big French Key side just to scope it out. And it actually looked pretty similar. So Big French Key is pretty similar in layout, and they do offer a lot of the same things that Little French Key seems to as well. Now, I've personally never visited Big French Key, so I'm not the girl to tell you a comparison between the two, but just know that they are different. Now, one thing that surprised and delighted me at Little French Key is that there was an abundance of wild conch. I have rarely found any conch when I snorkel, which is funny because I snorkel all the time. Almost every Caribbean port I go to, which is a lot, I always snorkel, and I don't think I've ever seen wild conch. But at Little French Key, especially in a certain spot, and I'll tell you where, they're everywhere. So when you're at Little French Key, there's the food hut over here. If you swim over, there's another pier over here, and it's undergirded by some rocks. And underneath those rocks are just dozens and dozens and dozens of wild conch. Now, of course, be very careful. These are animals in their natural habitat. It is weirdly and interestingly hypnotic to watch them kind of move about in their shells, but never take them home, don't take them out of the water, and use good sense, obviously. Now, one thing I want to note about why I think Little French Key is worth it, not only do you get all the stuff that you get for a pretty fair price, I think, but it's also such a better experience. Now, a lot of cruisers who visit Roatan, if they want a beach day experience, if they're cruising with a Carnival Cruise Line ship, they can get that right there at the port. But sometimes they want to get away from that because that gets pretty crowded. So they go to West Bay Beach, or if you're cruising to Taino Bay, there is not a good beach area within walking distance. So you got to take a taxi and go to West Bay Beach or another local public beach, but West Bay Beach is the most popular. I have been there and I really don't like it. It's a beautiful beach, don't get me wrong. The water's great, the sand is great, but it is so overcrowded. There's so many vendors and just lines of chairs and people and vendors trying to sell stuff. It takes a while to get there. It's not the cleanest. I just do not love the public beaches in Roatan. I just don't. And that includes West Bay Beach, although I know a lot of cruisers do like it, so it's whatever floats your boat. So a great thing about Little French Key is that you get to circumvent those crowds, those vendors, and you get that private experience. It feels more luxurious. It feels to me far more relaxing. And for me, I'm willing to pay for that. Now, when it comes to paying and money, one other thing that you want to think about is tipping. At Little French Key, tipping, of course, is optional. You are going to have people that are serving your food. You have an attendant who helps make sure that you get to your chair and that you're in a nice spot where you want to be, near the water or wherever. And it is helpful and appreciated to tip, but it is optional. And I do tend to be a little bit of a generous tipper, so I always bring cash for that. And don't ask me the amount because it's going to vary depending on every person, your budget, and your level of service. I've tipped as little as $5 for not so great service. I've tipped as much as $100 for exceptional service. It also depends on how many people are with you and that sort of thing. So yeah, in my opinion, Little French Key, it really is one of the best private island experiences in Roatan. There's not a lot of them. There's not a lot of competition in terms of other resorts or spots that do this kind of thing. The two big ones, of course, are Little French Key and Big French Key. And again, I can't tell you about Big French Key because short of kind of encroaching on their property and looking at it, I've never experienced that. But I will tell you that I did really like Little French Key. Enough so that I definitely want to go again, and I usually do try to get out and try different things, so that's saying a lot. Now, the booking confusion, it is real, and I can see where that turns a lot of cruisers off. But as long as you book direct at the right website, also don't forget, use code ProfMelissa to save 5%, I can tell you there's a pretty good chance you're gonna have a good time. And again, commit this to memory, the official website, littlefrenchkeyresort.com. Book direct, use code ProfMelissa, save 5%, get your email after you book, follow their instructions, and then from there, visit, relax, and have a good old time.